A proposal by Enbridge to reverse the flow of the so-called Line 9, a pipeline that runs under southern Ontario to Montreal, is being met with concern over the type of crude the line will carry in the now almost 4-decade-old pipeline. And joining us now for more on the proposal, Ken Hall. He is Senior Advisor in Public Affairs at Enbridge Pipelines, Inc., and Adam Scott. He's a Climate and Energy Program Manager with Environmental Defense. Good to have you two gentlemen here with us this evening for this discussion. We want to remind everybody that our producers are hosting a Twitter chat right now, so chime in with your thoughts on this issue using the hashtag AgendaTVO. A little background, because I think everybody knows about Keystone XL and Northern Gateway in the West. Line 9's not quite as famous. So, some background if we could, please, control room. Enbridge's Line 9 runs from Sarnia to Montreal. It opened in 1976. It originally flowed from west to east. It reversed in 1998 to carry cheaper imported crude oil from east to west, and the current capacity has it at 240,000 barrels per day. That's just some of the handy-dandy background, but one thing we don't know is why it's called Line 9. So Ken, tell us that for starters.
Well, Enbridge's pipeline, our mainline system, originates in Hardisty, Alberta, and as the mainline moves from Western Canada to the east, the provincial boundaries, state lines that it crosses, subsequently there's a name change, and we add numbers to those segments of the pipeline.
So this was the 9th one you built once upon a time.
Section 9 of the mainline system across Canada.
Gotcha. Okay, in a nutshell, tell us your proposal for Line 9.
The proposal is to reverse the flow, as you've indicated, Steve, to provide Eastern Canadian refiners with access to Western Canadian crude oil. The reason for that is strictly economics. There is a cost difference of approximately $15 to $20 a barrel between what they pay for offshore crude oil that they currently rely on and available supplies coming out of Western Canada and the Bakken Formation in North Dakota. So for obvious reasons, those refiners would like to get their hands on Western Canadian crude.
We're going to put a map up right now with a number of different lines on it in color code so that you can maybe take us through this and explain what it is we're seeing. Control room, how'd you like to put that one up right now? We're going to see, there's in green, I guess, the whole of Line 9.
That's correct.
And then if we do the next one in red, that would be phase 1 of Line 9. And then we're going to see blue, which shows, I guess, the second phase of Line 9. And the gist of all of this is that you want to get what going from where to where?
We want to be able to provide the Eastern Canadian refiners, and there are really 3 customers associated with this project. One is the Imperial Oil facility at Nanticoke in Ontario.
On Lake Erie?
Correct. Mm-hmm. And then we have 2 refineries located in the province of Quebec. One in Montreal East, which is owned and operated by Suncor, and one in the town of Lévis, which is across the St. Lawrence from Quebec City, the Jean Gaulin refinery, which is owned by Valerio, who recently purchased Ultramar. So it's an Ultramar facility. None of those 3 had access to Western Canadian crude until this proposal was brought forward, and this proposal was brought forward at the request of those 3 shippers.
Okay. Adam, your concern.
So we're really concerned about a number of things on this. First of all, the pipeline runs through some of the most densely populated parts of the country. This pipeline is not like many other pipelines. It runs directly through cities, under farms, under the edges of schools, and it crosses every single waterway that flows into Lake Ontario on the Canadian side. So it's not a pipeline that's in a out in a place that's not going to affect anybody. So first of all, that's a huge concern. But also the design of the pipeline is nearly identical to one that Enbridge also owns that spilled just 3 years ago into the Kalamazoo River, and they had the largest inland oil spill in U.S. history.
How old was that pipeline?
I believe it was in its almost 40s, I think. This pipeline is 38 years old, but of a nearly identical design. And frankly, that type of rupture, large rupture, into any one of those rivers is a very real possibility. You add that in with the proposal to increase the capacity of the pipeline above what it was originally designed to ship, and throwing into the mix, you're moving diluted bitumen, tar sands diluted bitumen, which is a really nasty product if it spills. If it spills, it contains toxic chemicals that can make people sick, which has happened in other spills of diluted bitumen. And what's left over is a form of heavier oil that has been shown it can sink in water.
Do you have any issues with the fact that they want to change the direction again?
I think that's actually the least of the concerns.
That doesn't matter.
For us. I mean, it's flown in. It's actually shipped in both directions over the years. So we're really concerned about the potential for a future rupture, and there are a lot of factors at play. But Enbridge has had fairly large spills on a couple of its pipelines in the last while, and we're not at all confident that they're up to protecting Canadians from a spill of that kind.
Ken, what would you say to make Adam more confident?
Well, I would disagree with a number of statements, and the one I take to heart the most is a statement about that this is a spill waiting to happen on this pipeline. A great deal of the public discussion around this issue seems to have drawn the conclusion that it's not an if, but a when in dealing with the likelihood of an incident on this pipeline, and Enbridge would certainly disagree with that. We feel that the pipeline is more than secure. It exceeds all regulatory requirements on the pipeline's maintenance. We have just recently finished a very thorough inline inspection run of tools on Line 9 from Sarnia all the way to Montreal. We have a very, very up-to-date understanding of the condition of the steel. And it goes without saying that Enbridge would not pursue this project if we did not think we could do it safely, because like Adam, Enbridge also shares a paramount concern for the safety of all the communities through which we operate.
But stuff happens, right?
There are pipeline incidents, as Adam mentioned. We have had spills. We're not perfect, but our company is an industry leader, and we have taken extreme measures in the 3 years since the Marshall, Michigan incident to make improvements to our system in all aspects of our system.
Okay, Adam, nothing's going to be perfect, and we need what he's refining. So what do you want to do about it?
Well, first of all, we don't need what this pipeline is shipping. Let's get that off the table. This pipeline is not for Ontario residents. The first phase of the pipeline has already been reversed. And so all we're talking about is increasing the profit margin of a couple of refineries in Quebec, potentially, in the short term. But in the long term, this pipeline will quite likely form a larger network of export pipelines for tar sands. The overall industry is really moving towards finding export routes. The tar sands themselves are set to triple their capacity to produce over the next couple of decades, and the industry is increasingly desperate for ways to get it out. And ultimately, Ontario residents are in the way. And lastly, pipeline spills are an inevitability. It's not a question of if; it's a question of when, for sure. There are pipeline spills on all pipelines that ship oil.
Hang on. That suggests that every time you build a pipeline, it's just a matter of time till there's a rupture or spill in that pipeline.
There are essentially no major oil pipelines operating today that have not had a spill of some kind. To date, Line 9 hasn't had one of those incidents, but several of its immediate neighbors have.
Can I just check that? Is that true? There's no major pipeline operating in North America today that hasn't had a problem?
Oh, I would disagree. We transport, over the past decade, we've transported over 12 billion barrels of oil across North America on our system of pipelines, and 99.99% of that oil reaches its destination safely. So that's not perfect, but it's pretty good.
Is the question. We've had numerous pipeline spills. If you follow the news, you can see very clearly even Enbridge has had a fairly significant spill in the time since the Kalamazoo spill in Wisconsin. They had a large spill last summer, the summer before last. You look at the Exxon pipeline spill in Mayflower, Arkansas, that just happened last spring. Very significant spill of tar sands into a residential community. It's forced the permanent evacuation of people from their homes. You can't undo the damage caused by one of these spills, and it's a very significant problem. And you have to weigh the benefit versus the cost. And in this situation, none of us stand to benefit from this project, except a couple of oil companies. But we have a great deal to lose.
Well, you say a couple of oil companies. I mean, the fact is people want the product that those refineries are refining.
Those refineries are currently operating. We're talking about narrow profit margin improvement, which in the long term may not even exist. That price discount he mentioned may not actually continue into the future if oil companies get their way.
Tell us this. Are you doing anything to, I guess if I were to use Adam's words, pick up your game to make sure that when you find something wrong in a pipeline, you can do something about it?
Absolutely.
Like what?
If I may, I would like to suggest also that we're not talking about trivial change here in terms of the economic incentives that are behind this project. For the two refineries in Quebec, they stand to save over $3 million every day. This is incredibly important to them because in their current capacities where they're relying on offshore crude, which costs more, their long-term viability is being brought into question. Suncor has publicly stated to the National Energy Board that if this project does not go through, the likelihood is very high that the Montreal East refinery will close.
How many jobs will that cost?
About 450 direct jobs at that refinery, but more importantly, there is a polyester manufacturing chain that surrounds that facility in Montreal East that employs an additional 3,500 people. Without feedstock from Suncor, none of those facilities can continue to operate.
Okay, yes, but here's what Mike Schreiner, who's the leader of the Green Party of Ontario, wrote in the Huffington Post earlier this summer. He said, whether you support expansion of Alberta's tar sands or not, shipping dilbit, i.e. diluted bitumen, through an old pipeline not designed to handle such corrosive material is simply dangerous and irresponsible. International pipeline safety expert Richard Kuprewicz predicts Line 9 will rupture. It's like sending a high current through a low voltage wire. It's definitely irresponsible and possibly very dangerous. Is diluted? Yeah, I've read this to you so that you would respond to it.
There is a study to suggest that by Mr. Kruzowitz. There's many studies to suggest the exact opposite is true. First of all, when Line 9 went into production, or when it went into service, it actually did carry heavy crudes, including crudes from the oil sands, and it did that between 1976 and 1998 when it was reversed. No evidence to suggest there was any impact from carrying that product at that time. The National Academy of Science, at the request of President Obama, has just completed a study specifically to look at this issue on the corrosiveness of diluted bitumen. That study proves, in my opinion, fairly strongly that there is no evidence to suggest that this material behaves differently than the other type of crude oil in the pipe. And finally, if I might also say, we don't intend to ship primarily diluted bitumen on this pipeline once it's reversed. Our customers have not requested that. Our customers have asked us to send them light crude oil, similar to the crude oil that they now receive from Africa and Mexico and other parts of the world. That oil would be coming from the Bakken Formation, which is located in Saskatchewan and North Dakota. So this will not be a dilbit pipeline.
Not a dilbit pipeline and not a game changer.
So Enbridge keeps telling us that this, don't worry, it's just going to be a light oil pipeline. It's just is not true. I mean, if you look at what's going on in the industry more broadly, the oil patch is producing large quantities of unrefined tar sands bitumen, and it needs to get to market. And if you look closely, pipelines like Line 9 are part of a longer-term strategy to move increasing quantities of tar sands out of the country and even into eastern markets. But if you look even more closely, you'll find that the Suncor refinery is actually thinking about applying to put a coker unit in the refinery, which would allow them to process.
Where's that one?
That's the Montreal refinery we're talking about. It would actually be able to process some amount of tar sands diluted bitumen soon, in the very near term. And longer term, there are several proposals which could turn Line 9 into an export pipeline.
Okay, well, speaking of pipelines, it sounds like we've got one tapping in the background here, so apologies for that, but we're going to persevere and get back to our conversation here. Adam, let me put this to you. This was an editorial in the Globe and Mail last month, which said not all pipelines are created equal, though all require some measure of regulatory scrutiny. The economic logic is compelling, beneficial to Western, Central, and Eastern Canada alike. The environmental hurdles can be surmounted. The Line 9 reversal should be recognized as an example of the least controversial kind of pipeline project. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, that editorial did not mention the word climate change or Kalamazoo. Those are the two, most compelling arguments around environmental risk from this. The Kalamazoo spill just happened 3 years ago on a nearly identical pipeline operated by the same company. And for an editorial to skip over that, somehow we'll fix that somehow, it doesn't cut it for me. For a pipeline that runs right through where the area where we're sitting in the city of Toronto, runs just north of here, we're at risk from that kind of a spill. A spill like the one that happened in Kalamazoo, if it happened into any one of these rivers, could see tar sands oil reach the Great Lakes.
How would you ensure, Ken, that that does not happen?
Again, it goes back to what my dad taught me, is when you take care of something, it can last a long time. Preventative maintenance is at the core of our program. We are very confident in the condition of our pipeline. The reason that we have not had a serious incident on this pipeline is because over the past 38 years, we've been taking care of it. I do not feel that it is true to say that this pipeline will fail if we do what we need to do to ensure that it doesn't. And that work is ongoing, and that work is ramping up. We are currently in the process of a major integrity program on Line 9, specifically to address any issues or features that we identify on the pipe stemming from the tool runs.
How far below the surface is line 9?
On average, the federal regulatory requirement is 24 inches of cover. Our pipeline is approximately 36 inches, 3 feet below surface.
So how do you take care of something you can't see?
Well, we can see it. That is the whole
Not with the naked eye.
Not with the naked eye, no. But with the technologies that we have available to us, that is really provides us with the inside view, if you will, on the condition of the pipeline. Those tools are very, very sensitive. We are looking at features on the pipeline that are less than a millimeter in size.
We're looking right now at an inline inspection tool. What does that do?
That tool travels along the inside wall of the pipeline, looking at it and taking measurements millimeter by millimeter around the 30-inch circumference of the pipeline. We use 5 different tool technologies, each looking for a specific kind of feature that could exist on the pipe. For example, a dent, corrosion, the presence of a crack.
That'll pick it up.
Very, very small features. Our preventative maintenance program is looking at features that left unattended 15 to 20 to 30 years from now could become problematic. That is the sensitivity that we're talking about here.
Adam?
The crack that caused the Kalamazoo rupture, Enbridge had documented on 3 separate occasions using one of those tools, but had not any idea that that was actually going to rupture when it did. So the tools are not a godsend. They do not protect you from all of these circumstances. And the expert reports on line 9 and that actually said it's quite likely there's going to be a spill, pointed out that really the only way to safely test a pipeline of this kind is a special test called the hydro test, where they pressurize the test or the pipeline up to the operating pressure and determine whether or not it's going to leak. And Enbridge has refused to do that and has argued against it throughout the hearing process. It's something the Ontario government has asked for. The City of Toronto and the pipeline landowners have all asked for this special kind of test.
Let's find out why. Ken?
A hydro test is, in today's industry with the technology we have available, that's an old style test. It is not anywhere near as effective and efficient as running tools and running regular intervals on tools to maintain an up-to-date picture on the quality and the condition of the pipeline.
So you're not doing it because it's ineffective?
We've told it's the gold standard of pipeline tests. It's, all of these new technologies are very new and in many ways untested.
I would disagree. And there are potential issues regarding using a hydro test. Some of them, for example, when you pressure up the pipeline, as Adam mentions, you don't take it to its operating pressure. You take it to 2 times its operating pressure. That's the safety that's built into the concept of the test. Take the pipe beyond what it's supposed to be able to do. Hold it there for 24 hours and then let that pressure off. If you don't have a leak, theoretically, your pipe is in good condition. When you're dealing with a pipeline like line 9, if we pressure the pipeline above the intended operating pressure of the pipeline and leave it like that for 24 hours, we therefore allow features in that pipeline potentially to grow exponentially. So now the tool data that we have, which indicates to us the condition of those features, is no longer accurate. We are not opposed to the idea of running a hydro test on line 9. We have suggested to the government that based on the technology available to us today, it does not have merit to do so. It also involves millions and millions of liters of water. That water has to be taken from somewhere under permit, and it has to be discharged somewhere under permit. Those are logistic things. You also have to do an evacuation of people who live in proximity to the pipeline during the duration of the test. In the City of Toronto, for example, that would involve several thousand people.
Adam, sounds complicated.
It's what's been asked for by all of the independent experts we've spoken to about this. It's really a tried and tested way of ensuring that the pipeline integrity is what the company says it is. And I don't see why we should have any real disagreement about it. If the company wants to increase the pressure beyond its existing capacity, they want to increase the amount of oil flowing through this pipeline 20% above what it traditionally has carried. I think we should be demanding something like this. If you look at this pipeline was built in 1975, when a lot of the development that surrounds the pipeline just wasn't there. There are huge communities that have grown up around and over top of where the pipeline runs, and the risk is significant. And I don't see why we should be, not doing everything we can to ensure its safety.
Ken, let me ask you this: the province of Ontario, the government of Ontario,
yes,
what's its interest in this?
obviously to ensure the protection of the people of Ontario and the environment that this pipeline traverses on its way to Quebec. And those are very legitimate concerns.
I ask because apparently they've asked the National Energy Board to ensure that you, Enbridge, carry $1 billion worth of coverage if this is to happen.
Yes.
That sounds like a big ask. Is it?
Well, it is in the sense that it's an ask that's been put forward as a proposed condition on the reversal approval from the National Energy Board, and it's a condition that's being applied specifically to one pipeline operator. The national government, Joe Oliver, the Minister of Natural Resources, has recently commented publicly on the fact that the federal government is looking at the creation of a contingency fund, if you will, to deal with oil spill events, similar to the Superfund structure that exists in the United States. At the industry-wide level, Enbridge is not opposed to the creation of that plan. We look forward to participating in the dialogue around preparing something like that.
You'd have to pay into it, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And obviously, all our costs are passed along to our shippers, who pay for the maintenance of our pipeline, who pay to move product on our pipeline. In essence, they too pass along those costs to their consumers. So there is that impact that people should be aware of as people are discussing these kinds of things. Sure. Ultimately, consumers will probably end up paying for all of this to occur.
If the Superfund, as you've described it, is not in place, if this goes forward, do you oppose the idea of carrying $1 billion worth of insurance on this?
I don't oppose it, but I feel that it's not necessary to be a mandated condition. And I say that simply because, and to use the example that Adam has drawn many times tonight, is the Marshall incident. We made a commitment to the people of Marshall. That was, a very serious incident, and we took full responsibility for it. We are still there to this day, continuing to do cleanup work in conjunction with the regulators in Michigan and the EPA in the United States. We will not leave until the job is done to the satisfaction of those regulators. We have spent over $1 billion on that cleanup. We have assumed full responsibility for all costs. We carry $685 million in insurance on our system. Everything on top of that amount would come out of our shareholders' pockets.
Okay, Adam, let me ask you about the interests of the province of Ontario here. Namely, and if I can use the example from out west, Christy Clark, the Premier of British Columbia, said, Northern Gateway is not going to happen unless I'm satisfied, right? Starts in Alberta, but if you want to come across my territory, you got to satisfy the people of British Columbia, which is essentially her, for argument's sake. Should Ontario make the same kind of play here? Is there an Ontario play here?
Absolutely. I don't understand why, as a province, we would accept a large, risky infrastructure project like this to go ahead without having, first of all, a say in the process. At the moment, right now, the federal government has gutted many of the environmental laws we've been used to over many decades, as well as gutting the regulatory process that governs pipelines. Line 9 is the first major pipeline to not have to go through a federal environmental assessment. There's been no meaningful public consultation. The public has been excluded largely from the hearings because they had to apply to even send a letter to be considered.
But where's the Ontario interest here?
So for the Ontario interest, they haven't even been able to do an independent study of what the risks are. They haven't been able to look at what the potential costs of a spill. What happens if this pipeline ruptures into the Don River in Toronto? What the amount of real estate that's going to impact is going to be a lot more than $1 billion in liability we're talking about.
Okay, but let me follow up with this though, which is, if I understand, environmental defense doesn't want us on oil at all, right? I mean, you think it's a fossil fuel we ought to get out of altogether.
Yeah.
So, as people watching this consider the value of what you are saying tonight, should they not keep in the back of their heads the fact that you're opposed to all oil development, exploration?
I should be very, very clear about this. We are at a moment in time when we can start making decisions about the future energy we want to be investing in. And our position is not shut everything down at the moment. Our position is now is the time we need to be thinking past fossil fuel and investing in the alternatives. Ontario has, just talked about, Quebec just released a new plan to boost EVs, electric vehicles, in that province to reduce oil demand. Ontario has been talking about transit, finding new ways to invest in transit. All of these are sort of options we have on the table to reduce our dependency on oil. But building new fossil fuel infrastructure, like oil pipelines, that just facilitates the increase in greenhouse gas emissions across the country.
It's not a new pipeline, though.
No, but the project is a new export route in the long term. It does facilitate the growth and unchecked expansion of tar sands oil in the country.
Ken, let me ask you this. We're down to our last minute here. What's the final hurdle for this project to go forward, and do you think you'll get over it?
The hearings have been concluded on the process. 60 groups, individuals participated through oral arguments, and an additional 110 people submitted letters of comment. National Energy Board has heard all of those arguments. They now have until March of 2014 to make a decision, although we do anticipate that their decision will probably come sometime in January. We anticipate that there will be a list of conditions attached to that approval, should the approval be the way they go on this, and therefore Enbridge will have a responsibility to meet the expectations of the regulator.
Do they have the final word?
The National Energy Board has the final word for...
So if you don't like what they say, can you appeal to the minister?
No.
That's it?
That's it.
Can the province of Ontario appeal it if they don't like the answer?
Currently, this is a federally regulated industry. Because we cross provincial lines, it is federal.
Gotcha. Okay, well, we'll keep watching until next spring when presumably this will resolve itself in the course of time. Adam Scott from Environmental Defense, Ken Hall from Enbridge Pipelines, Inc. Thanks so much for coming in and having the debate here on TVO tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.